Imagine a scientist named Mary. She is brilliant. She knows everything there is to know about color, every wavelength of light, every neuron in the visual cortex, every chemical reaction that happens when light hits a human eye. If there is a physical fact about color, Mary knows it. There is just one problem. Mary has spent her entire life locked inside a black and white room. She has never seen the color red, not once. Everything she has ever looked at, her books, her screens, her own hands under filtered light, all of it has been black, white, and shades of gray. She learned about color the way you might learn about a country you have never visited, through descriptions, through data, through secondhand reports. And here's the question that has kept philosophers arguing for over 40 years. One day, Mary steps outside. She sees a red apple for the very first time. Does she learn something new? Think about that for a second. Remember, Mary already knew everything physical about red. She knew the wavelength, roughly 700 nanometers. She knew exactly which cells in her retina would fire. She knew which parts of her brain would light up. She could predict, down to the last neuron, what would happen in her own head the moment she saw red. So when she finally sees it, is there anything left to learn? If your gut says yes, of course she learns something. She learns what red actually looks like. Then congratulations. You have just walked into one of the biggest fights in modern philosophy. This thought experiment is called Mary's Room, and it was proposed by an Australian philosopher named Frank Jackson in 1982. Jackson designed it as a weapon aimed at a very popular idea called physicalism. Physicalism says that everything in the universe is physical. Atoms, energy, brains, all of it. And if everything is physical, then every fact about the world is a physical fact. Your thoughts are just neurons firing. Your feelings are just chemistry. There is no magic ingredient, no ghost in the machine, just matter doing what matter does. Physicalism is the default position of most scientists. It is clean, it is simple, it has been incredibly successful. But Mary's Room seems to break it. Here is the argument, step by step. Before leaving the room, Mary knew all the physical facts about color. When she leaves the room and sees red, she learns something new. She learns what it is like to see red. Therefore, what she learned was not a physical fact, and therefore there are facts about the world that are not physical facts. If that argument works, physicalism is false. There is something more to the universe than atoms and energy. There is experience itself, the redness of red, the taste of coffee, the sting of pain. Philosophers call these raw feelings qualia. And qualia, according to Jackson, cannot be captured by any amount of physical information. You could hand someone every scientific paper ever written about pain, and they still would not know what pain feels like until they stub their toe. Knowledge from the outside is not the same as knowledge from the inside. Sounds convincing, right? A lot of people think so, but physicalists have fought back, and their counterattacks are genuinely clever. The first response is called the ability hypothesis. It says Mary does not learn a new fact when she sees red. She gains a new ability. Before, she could not recognize red or imagine red. Now she can. It is like the difference between reading a book about swimming and actually being able to swim. Learning to swim does not reveal secret facts about water. It just gives you a skill. Maybe seeing red is the same. No new facts, just new know-how. The second response is sneakier. It is sometimes called the old fact, new way argument. It says Mary does learn something, but it is not a new fact. It is an old fact, grasped in a new way. She always knew what red was, described in the language of physics. Now she knows the same thing, described in the language of experience. Same fact, different packaging, like discovering that Superman and Clark Kent are the same person. You have not discovered a new person. You have just connected two labels that were always pointing at the same thing. And then there is the most hardcore response of all. Some philosophers, like Daniel Dennett, simply bite the bullet. They say that if Mary truly knew everything physical about color, and I mean everything, then she would not be surprised at all. She would step outside, look at the apple, and say, "Yes, red," exactly as I predicted. Dennett argues that we only find the story convincing because we cannot actually imagine what knowing all the physical facts would be like. Our imagination fails, and we mistake that failure for a deep truth about reality. So who is right? Here is the twist that makes this story even better. Frank Jackson himself, the man who invented the argument, eventually changed his mind. Decades later, he announced that he had become a physicalist. He decided that his own famous thought experiment, the one that launched 1,000 papers, was probably flawed. The intuition that Mary learned something new felt undeniable, he admitted, but feelings can mislead us. Think about how rare that is. A philosopher building one of the most famous arguments of the century and then publicly walking away from it. But the argument refused to die, because even if Jackson gave up on it, the intuition behind it has not gone anywhere. Almost everyone who hears the story feels that Mary learned something. That feeling is stubborn, and it points at a genuine mystery that science has not solved. We can map the brain in incredible detail. We can trace every signal from the eye to the cortex. But nowhere in that map do we find the experience itself, the redness, the felt quality. Why does all this processing feel like anything at all? Philosophers call this the hard problem of consciousness, and Mary's room is one of the sharpest tools we have for pointing at it. And this is not just an abstract puzzle. It matters right now. We are building artificial intelligence that can describe colors, discuss emotions, and analyze pain. These systems know things in Mary's sense. They have the descriptions, the data, the third-person facts. But is anyone home? Is there something it is like to be them? Mary's room suggests that you could have all the information in the world and still be missing the one thing that matters most. So here is the question I will leave you with. Suppose we could give you a complete physical description of another person's mind. Every neuron, every signal, every state. Would you then know what it is like to be them? Or is every mind a black and white room, and the only person who ever steps outside of it is you? Maybe knowledge has a locked door in it, and maybe experience is the only key. Thanks for watching. If this melted your brain a little, that is the point. Subscribe for more big questions and bad drawings, and I will see you in the next one.